First of all, I'd like to thank the Northeast Pennsylvania Operators Group, as well as the Ford Trades for shining a light on this opportunity not only for our country, but for Northeast Pennsylvania and the job growth that we've enjoyed in this region. This afternoon it's not only an honor to introduce one of Governor Corbin's cabinet members, but also a privilege to welcome a great Pennsylvanian and a true personal friend of mine. Secretary Walker and I grew up in the same county in central Pennsylvania, Clearfield County, and we've walked a similar trail in promoting scouting in that region. The Honorable C.Alan Walker was confirmed Secretary of the Department of Community and Economic Development on April 12, 2011. As head of DCED, Secretary Walker works tirelessly to grow our economy, to improve our global competitiveness as a state, and to grow jobs here in the Commonwealth. Secretary Walker was not only President and CEO of Bradford Energy Group, he's also a member and chairman of several boards, including the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, Team Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Coal Association, Pennsylvanians for Effective Government. He's also the past president of the Pennsylvania Society. As I noted, Secretary Walker is deeply engaged in community with an extraordinary civic record, and served in the Big Horse Civic and Recreation Association, the Clearfield YMCA, the Clearfield Hospital Board of Directors, the Clearfield Foundation for Health, and we've walked a similar path in promoting the Bucktail Council and the Boy Scouts of America. Secretary Walker is a trustee of Bucknell University, who served on the university's long-range planning, building and grounds, trusteeship, and executive committees. Secretary Walker obtained his bachelor's degree in economics from Bucknell, and he earned his master's degree from my alma mater at Penn State University. Secretary Walker is a devoted husband who makes his wife extremely happy by being on the road 4 or 5 nights a week. He's a devoted father of 2 as well, both Bucknell graduates. Would you please join me in welcoming Secretary C.Alan Walker.
Thanks, Dave. I also have to add that I'm the proud grandfather of 4 grandchildren, and I'm hoping that they will also be Bucknellians. And Dave and I do share a lot in common, as we have very strong roots in Clearfield County, and both of our fathers still live there. My father is 101. Dave, I think your dad's well into his 80s. Yeah. And they're great people. So we have a long association, and as Dave said, a lot of it is through scouting, because as you know, in the rural counties of Pennsylvania, scouting is still a very strong program and highly respected. And so Dave, thanks for that kind introduction and for the invitation to join you here today. I want to recognize several of my DCED staff who are here. Gary Baker, Regional Director, is over here. Cindy Campbell is here somewhere. Oh, way in the back, Cindy. And our Gap Regional Director, Steve, you have a promotion or Steve? Way in the back there. Okay, good. So if you have any great ideas, and I heard one this morning whenever I came into the lobby at the hotel, these are the people you want to work with, because they're your contacts in Harrisburg, with Harrisburg. I've had to change my approach to speaking a little bit, because as Dave said, I've served on a lot of state boards and always dealt with a lot of controversial issues, especially when I was head of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce. And I would spend a day or so in Harrisburg, and I would come home at night and be kind of dragging to the house. And my wife said, "Well, how was your day in Harrisburg today?" I said, "Well, it's as close to capital punishment as you can get." So I'm not allowed to use that line anymore, because I now work in the government, but in a way it's still applicable. And you in Scranton will appreciate this. I left Harrisburg a little bit before 9 o'clock. It's a beautiful day down there. It will probably be 80 degrees down there today. But my home county, again, is Clearfield County. So if you live north of Interstate 80, you know what I'm talking about. I actually drove through 4 climate zones on my way up here today. And I want you to know that spring is coming. I called AccuWeather before I got here, and you're supposed to be in the 60s by this weekend. So spring is on its way, although it's hard to believe. Maybe you saw in the news this morning that they actually had to cancel school in Colorado because of snow. There's one school district out there that had over 1 foot of snow in May. I mean, come on, give us a break. So by way of background, I came to state government after spending more than 40 years in the private sector. And specifically, I was in the energy sector, which I think really puts me in a pretty good position for this job because I understand what energy is all about. I was actually in the coal mining business. You can say that in Scranton and Wilkesboro without being booed off the stage. You know, there are areas where coal mining is not looked on too favorably. But my dad used to tell this great story about the importance of knowing your product, knowing who you're talking to, and being able to speak with some credibility. So again, with my energy background, it's a great time for me to be involved in this job in Pennsylvania because of the gas industry that's coming in such a big way. But here's this quick story. He was a great coal salesman, and as you people in this area know, everything in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and even the early 60s, every industry was run on coal. So my dad made a trip to Chicago to call on the Swift Company, which was a very large coal user and a big national company. Excuse me, they still exist. And he got in to see the purchasing agent, and the purchasing agent, he had kind of funny look on his face. And my dad says, well, how are you today? And he said, I'm okay, but I want to tell you something. I hope you know a lot more about your product than the last coal salesman who was just in here. And my dad said, well, why is that? And the vice president of the purchasing said, and this was during the Depression, and there were a lot of misplaced people. This fellow that was in before my dad was actually in real estate, and he had a top hat on and spats, and you remember how people used to dress in that era. It was like somebody out of the Great Gatsby. But he said, the purchasing agent said, I asked this guy, how many British sterling units are in your coal? And he says, not a damn one. It's all mine right here in the United States. So when I talk to the gas industry, I at least know what a BTU is, a molecule of energy, and things like that, which really helps. So I recognize, and the governor recognizes, the importance of developing our state's energy resources. Low-cost domestic energy is key to growing the Pennsylvania economy and creating new industry clusters in the state. On Tuesday of this week, I did a ribbon cutting for a gas-to-energy landfill power project in Chambersburg, Franklin County. Methane from the landfill, which was being flared, is now running 4 generators. These generators provide 25% of the electricity needs for the 20,000 customers of the Chambersburg Power Company. And the rates to consumers that they pay in that community for electricity has dropped by 25% in the last year. But here's a picture of one of the generators. They have 4 cat generators that they're running off this gas that they were flaring. So I think you can see that we're really getting creative in the energy industry, and we're really driving down the cost of electricity for consumers in the state. If you look back at Pennsylvania's history, abundant natural resources and the Industrial Revolution positioned Pennsylvania as a political and economic leader and a hub of America's economy. Look at the industries that started and grew here: coal, steel, oil, cement, glass, and the downstream opportunities that relied on those industries and relied on our natural resources. Pennsylvania was the state that provided for capital formation to develop the natural resources of the rest of the country. And those of you who are here in the energy business, I know they like to forget it, but the capital that really came to develop the oil fields in Texas was Pennsylvania money. So, you know, we had great capital formation here, and it really went out all over the country to help develop this energy industry. Were Pennsylvania's economy a standalone economy at the end of World War I, it would have ranked as the 5th largest economy in the world, behind the economies of the United States, Great Britain, Germany, and France. But if you take a look at the period from 1930 to the present, and leave out the statistical anomaly that came with World War II, no other industrialized region of the world suffered a greater economic decline in relative terms than Pennsylvania. And I think if you live in Scranton or Wilkesburg, you can attest to that. So what happened that caused this decline? It's a complicated picture, but it boiled down to a few simple things. We became complacent, and our leaders lacked the necessary vision for change. And this is not all that uncommon. Overall, very few communities, states, or nations are able to sustain growth over long periods of time. This occurs because they fail to create and cultivate the mechanisms that enable them to continuously reform their economy to accommodate for change. The governor and I are firm believers in strategic thinking and planning for the future. The governor created the Marcellus Shale Commission to evaluate the shale industry and develop a roadmap to take full advantage of our energy opportunities, not for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 years. In February of 2012, the General Assembly passed House Bill 1950, and Governor Corbett signed the legislation on February 13. This historic legislation was the first comprehensive rewrite of the state's Oil and Gas Act since 1984. It also took a balanced approach to promoting growth while building upon world-class drilling standards, preserving our natural resources, and protecting public health and safety. In 2012, the governor formed a manufacturing advisory council to get real feedback from the industry throughout the state that are affected by the decisions that are made in Harrisburg. And currently, the governor's energy executive is working with state agencies and energy leaders throughout the state to develop a state energy plan. You know, I've been waiting since 1973, which was the first OPEC oil embargo, for the United States to develop a national energy policy. We haven't done it yet. I'm still waiting. So I finally convinced people at the state level, since it appears that the national government isn't going to get their act together to do it, let's develop a state energy plan, and that'll put us way ahead of everybody else. And we're very close to having a great state energy plan. Strategic planning is important, and I know that everyone here today understands its importance, or you wouldn't be here. I never thought in my lifetime that Pennsylvania would have the opportunities that we have today. Pennsylvania has added more than 110,000 private sector jobs to our economy, and the state's labor force has grown by more than 100,000 people to a record high of more than 6.5 million. That's our labor force. The labor force in the state of Pennsylvania is actually larger than the population of 37 states in this country. Technology, innovation, and low energy costs are driving our economy forward. And manufacturing, a sector we all once feared would continue to decline, is coming back strong. We could very well be on the verge of a modern-day industrial revolution. And once again, Pennsylvania is at the center of an energy revolution that can help clear the path to energy independence. We hear the words energy independence a great deal, and many of us thought it was a pipe dream, and that we were totally addicted to foreign oil. Now let's put this in relative terms. The enacted budget for the current fiscal year for the state of Pennsylvania is about $27.5 billion. Currently, the United States spends nearly $25 billion a month on foreign oil. That's a huge hole in our economy, and we can put an end to this practice once and for all if we develop our resources right here at home. And maybe many of you have seen that next year the United States will no longer be the largest importer of oil in the world. It is going to be China. So because of what's going on here in this country, we are becoming less dependent all the time on foreign oil. Pennsylvania is blessed to have rich diversity and abundance of natural resources, the building blocks that drove our economy in the past and is going to propel our economy now and into the future. We really do have it all. We have oil, we have coal, we have nuclear, we have hydropower, we have renewables, and the state's biggest game changer of all, the Marcellus and Utica shale gas. The Keystone State is a national leader in both energy production and resource diversity. Pennsylvania went from importing 75% of its natural gas only 5 years ago to becoming a net exporter of gas in June of 2011 for the first time in over 100 years. In Pennsylvania, nearly 240,000 of our citizens are currently employed in the oil and gas industries, and that number is expected to grow to over 500,000 in the early 2020s. The potential to put thousands of Pennsylvanians back to work is there, but only if we properly develop the resource. 2 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal ran an article on re-emerging economies. We all know emerging economies are the third world economies such as the BRIC countries, now rapidly industrializing. Re-emerging economies are areas that have already industrialized that are ready to move to the next level. The Wall Street Journal says these are great areas for investment because of what's going to happen in the future. And Pennsylvania is listed as one of those re-emerging economies. Energy prices are actually down 43% for natural gas and 40% for electricity, and as a result, Pennsylvania consumers are saving over $2 billion a year in lower gas and electric costs. Lower electric costs make us competitive and sets us up to recapture a lot of the manufacturing that is returning to the United States, a phenomenon commonly known as reshoring. And certain kinds of natural gas can be used directly in the manufacturing process. For example, ethane-rich gas is used to produce ethylene, one of the primary building blocks for the petrochemicals. And I think most of you in this room know that we are in discussions with Royal Dutch Shell about building a very large petrochemical cracker in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. I have to tell you the story, though, about a little educational job that I had to do. I got really excited when I was in the first meeting with Shell when they came in. And I had a meeting with one of the state senators from the eastern part of the state. And I said, "Did you hear we might get a cracker plant in Pennsylvania?" And he said, "I didn't even know Nabisco was looking for a location." So as you can see, there's a little bit of an educational gap that we have to do here in Pennsylvania. But while the ingredients are there for success, the decisions that we make today as leaders will determine the future that lies ahead. The phrase that best fits where Pennsylvania sits today is game changer. If we do it right, and you do it right, we have the potential to change the economy for the state for the next 100 years. I believe the best way to predict the future is to create it, and we have that opportunity. By recognizing the opportunities before us and the critical importance energy plays in raising the standard of living for all Pennsylvanians, powering our economy, and increasing the competitiveness of job creators, Pennsylvania is poised once again to be the energy capital of the nation. The governor recognizes that energy equals jobs and is committed to making sure that Pennsylvania's abundant natural resources, sound public policy, skilled workforce, and commitment to competitive markets are second to none. Now, I always like to close by reminding everyone that Pennsylvania is a $600 billion a year economy. Were we a standalone economy, we would be a top 20 economy in the world and a member of the G20 nations. That shows you the type of resources that we have to work with. So again, as I sit here and talk to you today, and I'm older than most of you, I've seen a lot, I honestly believe that Pennsylvania's best days